Hey, everybody, Professor Henry here, coming at you with an instructional, demonstrative kind of tutorial video on how to assess a portfolio using our course learning outcomes. This portfolio example comes from an English 5A course at the midterm, so we're only using a couple of Fresno State's learning outcomes. Okay, but the process for doing this will be exactly the same. It doesn't matter what course you're in when you're viewing this video, the process should be the same. Okay, just know that the example is specific to English 5A. Um, Also, you should definitely watch my other video that reviews our specific course learning outcomes before you go through this process. Okay, so be sure to watch my other video on reviewing our course learning outcomes and or rather using those learning outcomes by for doing an assessment like this. Okay, so all that being said, then let's go ahead and start reading this portfolio. And as we read it, we're really just going to read a couple of sentences or maybe a paragraph at a time. And once I get to the end of a paragraph, that's going to be a trigger for me to stop reading and write down at least one comment. Find at least one thing that's going to help me do an assessment of the portfolio. Okay, and again, I'm really going to think about this in terms of the criteria on this rubric. And the criteria is made up out of, in this case, a selection of our course learning outcomes, but in many cases, it will be all of our course learning outcomes. Okay, so when I get to the end of this paragraph, I want to see if I can find something in terms of reading and writing strategies, or summary conversation, or rhetoricality. Okay, that's the goal. But I'm going to go ahead and close this rubric for now because it's taking up a lot of screen space and I don't need to see it. Okay, instead, I'd rather use that screen space to make my text a little bit bigger. It's easier to read. Also, I should let you know too that the interface that I'm using for the demonstration here, this is the instructor or the teacher interface. When you as a student are doing a peer review through Canvas, your tools are going to look just a little bit different, or no, the tools are basically the same, but the layout on your screen is going to be a little bit different. But there's another tutorial video that shows you step by step how to do the peer review, or in our case, the peer assessment. And you do end up getting access to all of these annotation tools and to the rubric. Okay, the layout on the screen is just a little bit different. So just a heads up on that. Okay, so with all of that, then finally, let's get started. And we're actually not going to get that deep into it because the first thing I notice is that the working title for this essay is writing project number 2. And that's kind of a sad little title. It's really a non-title is what it is. The student writer, for whatever reason, just had not had a chance to come up with a creative title that that tells their readers something about what their essay is going to be about. Imagine a reader that was not a part of this class. They would have no idea whatsoever what writing project number 2 means. For me, thinking about our learning outcomes here for the assessment of this portfolio, it's essentially an ineffective title. I see that as a rhetoricality issue. It's a rhetoricality thing. Okay, so I'm not really going to comment on the rubric yet. What I am going to do is try to pull this comment back up and just leave a note to myself. Okay, no working title. I'm remembering that I'm associating that with rhetoricality. And in my view, for rhetoricality, that is not meeting expectations. So right now, just based on the title, the rhetoricality is a 1 or a 2. That might change depending on what else comes up in the portfolio, but for now, it's a 1 or a 2. It's not meeting expectations. Okay, let's get to this first paragraph and see what else we can find. Technology is always advancing, and it seems to be happening faster than we could have ever imagined. That's a pretty interesting hook to me. I'm with it so far. In technology, there is always something new, something to improve. Every day, there seems to be an advancement. For example, almost every week, iPhone users receive a system update. Why? Because someone out there has found a way to make something better, faster, and more efficient for us. It seems like a never ending story. There is always something. When will it stop? Will it ever stop? Will it take over our lives? Or has it already taken over our lives? Honestly, a pretty interesting introduction as far as I'm concerned. I'm continuing to think about this in terms of rhetoricality and thinking, the writer thinking about their audience and how they might, bring their audience into this topic. Um, I'm starting to think that rhetoricality is balancing out a little bit. Oh, interesting intro, full of hooks in the form of like those rhetorical questions. I also really like this idea that they are talking about like how fast technology updates, and they're using really short and fast sentences to express that. So it's like the sentence style and the content, the point that they're trying to make, the sentence style and the point are working together, right, to make that point. And I don't know if that happened by accident or if that was a purposeful thing, but either way, it's working really well, I think. Yeah, fast sentences plus fast, let's see, technology updates. Okay, that's something that I refer to as euphony, right? When the content and the form are working together, they're working in concert. That's euphony to me. And I want to remember that's rhetoricality plus plus. So I was thinking it was maybe a one or a two based on the title, but now that I get through the introduction, I'm thinking rhetoricality might be at least a three. So far, seems like something of an implied thesis. Maybe the thesis is kind of embedded in these questions. Um, and then the paper is going to work to answer those questions. So, I mean, that could work as a thesis strategy. I'm curious to see if the second paragraph is this going to be the first body paragraph or is it going to be a continuation of the introduction? Let's see. Not too long ago, computers were rarely used. In fact, I actually remember that when I was a child, the only time I would ever use a computer was at school during computer class, which lasted about 30 minutes. None of my friends had computers. None of my friends' parents used one. Computers were rare. Today, we see computers everywhere. It is safe to say that almost everyone uses a type of computer every single day. Yeah, I see that as like background information, context. That perhaps is a rhetoricality thing. I also think that that could also be um, like a useful writing strategy to include that background information. Also, part of the summary or conversation of what's going on. It's really hard to talk and type and read and all that at the same time. It's funny too because one of the articles that I know that we read in this overall conversation on a key issue in science and technology. One of those articles is multitasking can make you lose focus. Yeah, I'm feeling that right now. Really, really having to work hard to stay focused and stay on track. Right. So, yeah, I think this background information it could hook into reading and writing strategies or summary conversation, both. And this is a good thing to reveal and suggest that there is crossover. That One sentence could be working well, both in terms of reading and writing strategies and summary conversation, as in this example. Okay. Overall, meeting expectations so far. That's kind of what I'm feeling. Third paragraph here. Technology is changing the world and will continue to change it whether we like it or not. It is clear that technology is having an impact on humanity. Some people argue that technology has had a negative. For example, in the article, Is Google Making Us Stupid? Nicholas Carr explains how he believes that the internet is reprogramming us. Yeah, I think we had just maybe like a little missing word right there. I suppose some people argue that technology has had a negative impact. Maybe kind of borrowing from the noun here, a negative impact, for example, and then so on. Okay. A good setup for the summary, Nicholas Carr explains how he believes the internet is reprogramming us. So there's a good summary conversation moment. Okay. The name of the author and the verb are coordinated together. The verb there is an S form of the verb. It's in present tense. That's exactly what MLA likes. That's all good. Carr explains how the internet was designed to feed us information quickly and easily. Carr insists. All right, so we're trying out a couple of different verbs here, all in these signal phrases. So I'm liking that. Carr insists that the internet is taking away from the work of the mind. That's just a good sentence. Carr insists that the internet is taking away from the work of the mind. Yeah, that's a great sentence. The rhetoricality plus there, just for a finely crafted sentence. I like it. In his article, Is Google Making Us Stupid? Well, we kind of had that introduction sentence before, a little redundant, but not a big deal. Where do we leave off here? In his article, Is Google Making Us Stupid? Carr attempts to prove his point. So there's another like author verb combination, right? I really, really like that this writer is trying out all of these different verbs in their signal phrases. This is again good summary conversation stuff. Nicholas Carr attempts to prove his point when he explains how Google's technology works. He observes that and there's a little maybe punctuation missing there. Suppose probably that there should be a period. He observes that, quote, Google, says its chief executive, Eric Schmidt, is, and maybe it looks like a quote within a quote. So here, do you want to use like that little single quote mark, the one that looks like that? For quotes within a quote. I mean, ultimately, and again, this is a midterm portfolio for English 5A. I'm nitpicking on this, and I'm just leaving that comment to leave it. That's probably not going to ultimately affect the assessment. And in fact, language coherence, which is the writing assessment dimension in Fresno State's first year writing program, that's primarily concerned with the punctuation and mechanics and grammatical matters and that sort of thing. That's not even on our rubric here. But anyway, just wrote it to wrote it. Anyway, so Eric Schmidt is, quote, a company that's founded around the science of measurement, end quote within a quote, and it is striving to systematize everything it does. Drawing on the terabytes of behavioral data it collects through its search engine and other sites, it carries out thousands of experiments a day, according to the Harvard Business Review, and it uses its results to refine the algorithms that increasingly control how people find information and extract meaning from it. And I suppose this here should be the end quote for the previous section. Carr believes this type of technology is destroying our critical thinking skills, making our brains more useless as time goes on. Okay, so overall, think that's a very long quote for a direct quote. Writer could try mixing paraphrasing with direct quoting. Perhaps. See, depending on a really long quotation like that, makes me kind of lean towards summary conversation, meeting expectations, but probably not exceeding expectations. I really, really like this rhetorical move at the end of this paragraph, though, where the writer has not just left this long quote to kind of speak for itself. The writer has included at least one sentence at the after the quote to kind of explain what the writer takes this quote to mean. That comes straight out of it's one of the textbooks that we use in English 5A and English 5B at Fresno State. I use it with English 1 at College of the Sequoias and Visalia. They say, I say. So this kind of overall template of for this paragraph that this writer is using, I mean, it comes straight out of chapter 2 and chapter 3 from They Say, I Say. So as a writing instructor, I recognize that this writer is trying out these techniques from They Say, I Say. And of course, I appreciate that and I like that quite a lot. Yeah, so this sentence here at the end of this paragraph, right? It's the last part, the last slice of bread, if you will, in what we call the quotation sandwich, right? Yeah, and then another like name verb coordinating together, and it's yet another unique verb the writer is trying out to get their quote and their summary put together. My only other issue is I think that overall the summary it it mischaracterizes Nicholas Carr's stance on the issue a little bit. I think Carr is not directly having a negative stance toward Google and the internet. Carr's stance in his article is more like exploratory in the sense that he's recognizing that Google and the internet is altering or it's changing how he encounters information, how he processes information, how he works with a written text. He says that it's definitely changing, but I don't think he really labels that as a positive thing or a negative thing, only that it is changing. Right. So there's some things here in the summary that I think it doesn't quite accurately represent Carr's stance. Again, this is the kind of thing that I think would keep summary conversation from it exceeding expectations. Okay, we're really in the meeting expectations zone. How about this next paragraph? Some people not only believe that technology affects our thinking, now that's a more accurate representation of Carr's stance. It affects our thinking, not necessarily in a positive way or a negative way. It's just merely affecting our thinking. Some people not only believe that technology affects our thinking, but also our writing. Now, that's a really good transitional sentence, right? Right? Getting us into maybe the next article that they're going to summarize. And as a way of kind of like, transitioning or connecting the previous point to the next point, right? That sentence is like a pivot point in the essay. Nice. In the article, Does Texting Affect Writing by Michaela Cullington, she writes an essay on what students, teachers, and professors believe texting is doing to today's writing skills. In her article, Cullington speaks about arguments others make on how texting has a negative effect on writing. Cullington acknowledges some people believe that, again, this great pattern, really, really sticking with the author's name and coordinating that with a specific vivid verb in their signal phrases. Cullington acknowledges some people believe that quote, many people use abbreviations instead of words. The language created by these abbreviations is called text speak. Some people believe that using these abbreviations is hindering the writing abilities of students. End quote. I am noticing, though, with all these direct quotes and with the paraphrases and with the summaries, there's no MLA style in text citation in terms of page numbers. No parenthetical citations at the end of these sentences that tell us what page number is all this stuff coming from. And I can say that this definitely comes from a paginated source, so it should have page numbers. There's an exception to MLA style. You don't have to cite a page number on a source that doesn't have page numbers, right? That's not paginated. But I know because I was the teacher for this course, we were using sources that were paginated, so we should have parenthetical citations with page numbers for all this stuff. That's definitely a summary conversation thing, and honestly, because that's a pretty big oversight, that might bring summary conversation back down to not meeting expectations. But she also notes opposing views such as texting is actually having a positive effect on writing. In fact, it seems likely that texting has no significant effect on student writing. I kind of want there to be another sentence between these two different, perspectives, right? Rather than mashing them together in one quote. Between these opposed views. How's that? To get a clearer perspective, Collington interviews teachers and students to analyze their responses and also analyze student writing samples. Toward the end of her essay, Collington confesses that she too is a texter and comes to the conclusion that texting does not impact student writing. Collington asserts, quote, my research suggests, yeah, a little clumsy there. Collington asserts, my research suggests. Okay, so some practice on like choosing the specific words to quote so such that it like smoothly fits the grammatical structure of the sentence that surrounds it, right? But that's pretty advanced. If the student writer was doing a really good job on that, that would be trending towards exceeding expectations, right? But they're practicing, and that's good. Collington asserts, my research suggests that texting actually has a minimal effect on student writing. It showed that students do not believe text speak is appropriate in formal writing assignments. They recognize the difference between texting friends and writing formally and know what is appropriate in each situation. This was proven true in the student samples in which no examples of text speak were used. Many experts would agree that there is no harm in text speak as long as students continue to be taught and reminded that occasions where formal language is expected are not the place for it. There will always be the debate of whether technology is affecting humanity in a negative or positive way. Okay, so it kind of sounds like we're headed into the conclusion here in this paragraph. The student writer missed the quotation sandwich strategy in this paragraph. So another like really long quote. So we have like 7 lines worth of directly quoted material, but this time no explanation as to what they take the quote to mean, right? Quote left to do all of the work and speak for itself. I do think that overall the summary does a better job at like accurately representing the author's stance, the author's point of view. They they mischaracterize Carr's Nicholas Carr's stance, but I think they got Michaela Cullington's stance pretty well. Okay, so there's a bonus. But yeah, I'm a little disappointed to see this really long quote left there to do all of the work and speak for itself. Hey, that would be probably my biggest point of advice for this student writer moving forward is to practice choosing what material you want to quote a little more selectively, um, work on practicing, condensing through summary and paraphrasing a little bit, right? So it's just a little bit more balanced. And don't forget this bottom slice of bread in the quotation sandwich. Okay, the top slice is the setup. They're doing a great job with the setup. The middle of the sandwich is the quote itself. Um, right now, there's like there. I don't know. It may be weird to talk about this in terms of a sandwich. How can you have too much stuff in a sandwich, right? But in this case, there's too much stuff. The bread is too thin compared to the rest of the sandwich, so it's going to fall apart. Hey, that analogy works. And in this case, there's no bottom slice of bread at all, right? So practice that quotation sandwich. Okay, let's look at this conclusion, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. There will always be that debate of whether technology is affecting humanity in a negative or positive way. The most important thing we can do is be realistic with ourselves and admit that technology has also caused some great things. We would be naive if we didn't acknowledge all the great things technology has brought to us. Technology has been able to connect families around the world. It has made life a lot easier. It's made advertising easier and better, which has allowed many businesses to grow. They're introducing some kind of like new ideas overall in the conclusion, generally not advisable. Um, maybe thinking about like, how the ideas that have been developed earlier in the essay might, have impact in the future. I mean, I see maybe they're trying to do that, but this whole like idea, it's made life a lot easier. It has made advertising easier. Like Nicholas Carr doesn't talk about that, or at least not what they summarized from Nicholas Carr. Michaela Collington doesn't talk about that. Um, has allowed many businesses to grow. Yeah, these are new ideas that aren't developed elsewhere in the essay. So I would I don't know, maybe cut that out of the conclusion, or I don't know, do something. But to me, it is not seeming to fit. Technology has even made this class possible. Technology is always advancing, and it seems to be happening faster than we could have ever imagined. It's safe to say that technology is here, and it's here to stay. Okay, and that's that. They do have a list of works cited, so that's good. The format isn't quite right, but they tried. And at this point, midterm English 5A, that's meeting expectations. They tried. And they have most of the information that they need. All the bibliographic information is there. Format isn't quite right. That's okay. And again, that'd be another summary conversation thing. Okay, so summary conversation. Yeah, not having those in-text parenthetical citations for the page numbers. I mean, for me, I've got to say a 2 for not meeting expectations. It was heading towards a 4, but not having the in-text citations, I think, brings it down to a 2. But because they were doing some other, good work with that transitional sentence here in the middle, that keeps it from being a 1 in my view. I noticed that as I was reading, I really didn't find that much in terms of reading and writing strategies. Just that I was recognizing the reading and writing strategies from They Say, I Say and attributing that to summary conversation. So, um, maybe reading and writing strategies I can say is meeting expectations, headed toward exceeding expectations, because again they've done a very good job in part of the quotation sandwich, the setup. All of the times they say the author's name and match that with a verb in their signal phrase, and then just kind of like smoothly going from sentence to sentence, quoting and summarizing and such. um Yeah, I guess another reason summary conversation to not quite meet expectations is the length of some of those quotes at the ends of the paragraphs. For rhetoricality, I remember being fairly taken with the sentence strategy at the beginning. Uh, I'm also thinking about the rhetoricality in terms of the key features that exist in this genre of this is an informative report. So, did they touch on all of the key features? Did they touch on all of the key features? I think they got most of them. I don't want the video to be too long, so I'm not going to go and bring up a list of the key features that our textbook talks about that exist in the genre of reporting information. Um, it sort of looks to me though like maybe this student was choosing to focus a little bit more on the they say I say side of things than developing all of the key features of reporting information. There is a thesis. I think it's kind of an implied thesis. It's working in terms of these like rhetorical questions, and then their report attempts to go on to answer these questions, but not really. I don't think that they've framed either one of the articles that they used in a way that answers this question. Has technology taken over our lives? But I guess sort of. Does texting affect writing? Has texting taken over our lives? Well, according to their report, not so much, at least in terms of how it's affected or taken over students' writing skills. So, okay, I'll go with that. Has Google and the internet taken over our lives? We're gonna see like what their summary points to. Carr believes this type of technology is destroying our critical thinking skills, although again, that's a mischaracterization of Carr's stance, making our brains more useless as time goes on. Again, mischaracterizing, but I can see here that maybe with this sentence, they were trying to reach back to their thesis to try to answer that question that they were asking, right? So rhetorically good. It's just that the accuracy is needing some refinement, right? But I see they're trying for sure, meeting expectations. Okay, so if I take all of these together, I don't need to do like a mathematical average, like add these three things up and then divide by three, and then that's what the overall assessment is. Okay, I don't have to do it that way. I just now I have a pretty good sense. Well, reading and writing strategies was a 4, summary conversation was a 2, rhetoricality was a 3. Overall, the portfolio I think is in the 3 range. Although I'm still really concerned that they missed this business of the parenthetical citations in the essay, no page numbers. But I think honestly, like just reminding this writer would help. Maybe sharing some examples would help, and they'd get it. They're already doing such a good job with the signal phrases. There's no incidence here of even accidental plagiarism, really. Um, it's very clear throughout who is saying what. Okay. They just need some examples and some reminding. Hey, we also do cite page numbers. Okay. So there we go. Overall assessment 3. Once I am done with the rubric, oh yeah, in fact, I should also say too, there's these little conversation bubbles that you can use to bring up a comment box that is specific to the rubric criteria, right? So this is the spot where I've asked my students to write at least a sentence or two to explain why they have rated that criteria the way that they have. Again, I don't want this video to end up being longer than it already is, and I know it's been a long one. But that's how you would access that text box. Okay, the little conversation bubble there. We'll bring it up. Okay, and another reminder for my students, I don't know why Canvas has been designed this way. I think it's a major flaw in their system, but it is what it is. Do not click your save button until you are finished, because once you tap the save comments button, it locks you out. You cannot add any more comments. I know it's a good habit to kind of save as you go, but for this project, you can't do that. If you do, you will only be have your one comment or whatever put in there, and then you won't be able to save additional comments. Okay, so save your save until you're finished. And there we go. Okay. I guess I was really focused on the point annotation tool. You can also use this highlight tool to, highlight a group of words and leave a comment that way. You can use the strike through tool to, like, cross out a word or a phrase or something. I mean, those are tools though that are more for like formative assessment. In other words, like suggestions to make the writing better. This kind of feedback is more summative assessment. Okay. We're making a judgment on the writing based on this criteria. So it's a different kind of feedback. I find the point annotation tool to be the most useful for that. And notice the comments here that I'm making. I'm more like making observations about the writing. I'm not leaving feedback on how to make the writing better. Okay, because that's a different kind of feedback. Okay, I need to be done now. This video is really long, lots of details, but I hope it has been helpful for you in seeing how we can use our learning outcomes based rubric to assess your colleagues' portfolios and eventually to do a self assessment of your own portfolio. So, thanks for sticking with me for so long. Good luck on all of your portfolio processes, and I look forward to reading your stuff too.